Hello, welcome to the Eurogamer.net podcast, number 113. I'm Tom Champion, and with me today, Ollie Welsh.
Hello.
Hi, Ollie. You alright?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Good. And joining us, he's not even a guest these days. He's just a guy who's always here. It's Chris, or should I call him Anna Donlan.
Hello, how you doing? Hi, everyone.
Yeah,
Good.
otherwise known as Anna from the Ukraine.
Yes.
Finally, my secret is out.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But yes, we're going to be talking about Diablo 3 today, a game you may have heard of. I kind of want to ignore the online problems, at least to begin with.
Tell me about it.
So if we could possibly start with your guys' thoughts on the game, perhaps without referring to always online lag, hacked accounts, vanishing achievements, etc., etc.
Yes.
At least for the first 10 or 15
I
minutes
would
or
be
so.
very happy to do that.
That would be good. So, Ollie, you reviewed it for us.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you enjoyed about it, why you like it. Is it everything you hoped for, etc., etc.?
Yes and no to the hopeful thing. It's a weird one. It's a weird one for me because I don't think, professionally, I've ever covered a game so closely for so long before it came out. I've been writing about Diablo 3 since it was unveiled 4 years ago. I've played every playable build they've had for the press. I've seen it 4 or 5 times. I've interviewed the game director 3 or 4 times, and I know a lot of the processes they went through with the game design. So I've been following the game really closely, and I liked it right from the start. I'll come out and say it that although I played the Diablo games before and liked them, I'm not a huge fan. The Blizzard game that really caught my imagination was World of Warcraft. Right. So for me, it was A, a really cool new Diablo game, but B, also a game that might present some of the cool stuff about World of Warcraft, but in a much more kind of manageable form, which I think it really does, and I think it does that superbly. A lot of that is tied in with it being always online, which we'll come to later. But what has also been really interesting is I really like game mechanics design, which Blizzard are insanely good at, almost to the point of obsession, because they're always constantly revising and constantly looking at their decisions and going, I'm not sure about this, shall we redo it, and I've never known them do it so much as they have with Diablo 3, where they constantly just kind of pared back particularly the role-playing game systems and the skill systems, and I think what they've come up with is amazing, but I actually think it's a bit overproduced and it's a bit overbalanced. I think they've worked too hard, and I think the difficulty curve in particular is too shallow and too slow. So the game is really fun. It's immediately fun to play because the skills are really cool and the class designs are brilliant, and it's great fun to leap into battle as a barbarian or a demon hunter or a witch doctor or whatever and pull off all of these outrageous skills. Yeah. But the game doesn't really kind of test you for the whole of the 20 hours it takes until really the final boss battle to complete the campaign on normal difficulty.
So is this all to do with them looking at this game as a game that is going to last for the next 10 years? Yeah,
well, absolutely, or at least certainly they want people playing it solidly for 6 months, and they hope that people are going to play it solidly through till the first expansion comes out. Obviously, they expect that it'll tail off and then pick back up again. But yeah, it's about the long tail, and the fact that your first 20 hours in the game are basically your preview. You get to sample the plot and just sort of bash through it and have fun, and then when you get to nightmare difficulty, which is not you don't start again from scratch in your difficulty mode. You take your character at whatever level, probably somewhere in the mid-30s where you finished, and just continue playing from the start of the game in nightmare difficulty. That's when the combat mechanics, which are really cool, start to show themselves, and when you start having to pay more attention to your skill build and to what items you're equipping to make sure your character is going to play solidly. But I think it's way too slow to do that. It does get tough at points, but it just gets tough by throwing millions of enemies at you and having them hit so hard they can kill you in one hit. And that's it raises the blood pressure and keeps things going. But I really think they could have. I think it was almost too smooth, basically.
Okay.
It's that famous Blizzard polish maybe working against them a little bit.
Yeah, Chris, you reviewed it as well, and you've been playing it, I guess. And how's it been for you?
Yeah, I really love it. I think what is fascinating to watch is how, talking to other people, I really like the approach that they've got. They've done with a lot of things. So it is all about the skills and your powers, much more than any other element of the game. That's what it's about. It's about choosing a loadout. And what I particularly like about it is what a lot of people really don't like about it is that you can respec your character on the fly, which is a very bold move, I think. So I was talking to some people who are very much sort of PC gaming journalists, some people I know, and who I totally respect, and I think they're probably right for them. And they were saying that they didn't feel they were making builds because they weren't locking themselves out of other things when they were doing them, which is quite interesting.
So
they were saying you can't.
They
were saying like you can't make builds in this game, and I was thinking actually all you do is make builds. You switch in and out.
I am totally with you. I think it's a brave move. It first appeared about a year ago.
Yeah.
And at that stage, there was still a bit more of a skill tree that you moved through, but that's when they started saying we're just going to let you swap the skills in and out. Or I think it may have been like at each stage you were maybe choosing between two.
Yeah, that's right. And even within that, over the last couple of years, they refined it, and they're always giving you a little bit more flexibility. So when runes were introduced, runes are really interesting. Runes are these things which allow you to flare your skills in certain directions. So, like, do you want like a rain of frogs, or do you want a giant frog? Is the classic example.
Yeah.
Or do you want a flaming frog? And these runes originally they work essentially like sockets in skills. You put them in a skill, and originally you had to put them in, and then that was it. And then they were like, well, maybe you can go somewhere and take them out again. And now you can just switch them in and out whenever you want, and they're not loot anymore. They unlock at a certain level. There is that kind of. That's where you see Blizzard's kind of.
This was where
control freakery.
This is where they lost me. Actually, it was like really late on. It was early this year when they announced that, and they put in the beta that you'd be able to. You'll just have complete freedom over skills, and that runes were no longer items. And that was where I think no, that's just. I mean, I was totally on board up to then. That's what I thought it was a step too far. But no, I love it, and I disagree. I understand where those people are coming from, but I disagree with that. You're not making builds, because if you can tinker, then you can refine your build, and you're not stuck with what you've done.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what people want. And some people want a decision where they're like, this is a decision of consequence, and I'm locking myself out of other stuff, and that's actually what they want. And I understand that, and there are some games certainly where I want that myself. But I think with this game is a laboratory. It's like what happens if I put these four powers together? Especially since the stat game is really played down now. You're not like putting talent points, moving points around. The stat game is really played down. So all of your experimentation is going on in terms of, do I want this area attack? Do I want this kind of ranged thing going on? How are they going to work together? What if I took this one out and put something else in there? And you have to be able to mess around with those. You play across the entire class in one go. I don't know if that means maybe you don't replay the class as many times from scratch, but I don't really mind about that. There's
I think there'll probably come a point, and it'll probably be in the late levels, where you will at the very least have to keep separate gear sets for different builds on one class.
I think it's pretty true.
They've actually put. I was interested to note they've actually put achievements in for leveling multiple. Leveling 2 of the same class to level 60, and I was like, I don't really see why you would do that, other than if you really liked the male and female character models. But unless you, I mean, it may be that you just want to grow with a certain build organically, and some of them are going to be really different, like a classic glass cannon wizard. I will keep everyone at bay with slowing spells and then bombard them with magic, or a battle mage who's got ice armor and a magic sword and just gets stuck in there. Those would be really, really different to play, and you might actually want to experience the flow of the game developing those, but there's nothing in the game to say that you have to do it that way. I think the thing is, the skills are the content in this game. They are the best thing about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Each one of them is just amazingly crafted 6 times over for the 6 different runes, and I think it would have been just too much of a shame to tell people, well, you choose that one, you're never going to know what Frost Nova feels like.
Sure.
So I'm totally on board with it. It's definitely, though, now much more of an action game than it is a role-playing game.
But then we're probably talking about this too early, but I think the one thing you can always tell people when they say they don't like it in this way is that Torchlight 2, which is kind of in a weird way the other Diablo 3. So just to, it was made by people who certainly made Diablo 1, and I think they made Diablo 2 as well.
Yeah, they're Blizzard North guys, or at least some of them. Max Schaffer, the game director.
And they made Torchlight, which is absolutely wonderful, and they're making Torchlight 2, which looks pretty incredible.
Out this summer.
It is out this summer, and it is very much, it's a continuation. I was talking to someone and we were talking about this. It's a continuation of Diablo 2, as is Diablo 3, but in a different direction. And it is more traditional. I think you can lock yourself out of things. You are putting points around.
Yeah.
And it is the people who don't like Diablo 3 the most tend to say, but it doesn't matter because I'm on the Torchlight 2 beta and I like it all the more. And
well,
it's that kind of cachet thing of like, you like Elastica, I'm showing my age here. I would prefer Wire or whatever. So there we go.
I think, that's certainly a happy thing. I'm very glad Torchlight 2 exists in that way, because it means people will still get that fix, and it does look like being an excellent game. Plus, it still has that kind of 90s PC game thing that people obviously miss. And I'm going onto this forbidden topic at this moment, but it's like you can play it offline, or there's a LAN mode, and if you go online, there's a big list of different games with like people's written descriptions next to them.
There's an achievement in the first one for putting in mods, and I think that is something which you won't be doing in Diablo 3.
No chance.
I checked out the forum a little bit earlier, and there was a few people on there complaining about the game being, they found a bit boring or too easy. Is that to do with normal difficulties level? You alluded to it before.
That's partly it. I think the story runs out of steam a little after the second act, so that might be part of it as well, in that it's still throwing like cool stuff at you, but just less variety of cool stuff, and you're not dotting around the place feeling like an adventurer. You're just in a big war zone basically. But I think it's also like the nature of Diablo action. I mean, I'd be surprised if people were levelling that criticism who played Diablo 2, or at least I think they probably, if they did, are remembering it with rose-tinted spectacles, because that was a pretty monotonous game in a good, like, hypnotic way. But and the combat, honestly, go back and play it. It has so much less going on than Diablo 3 does, and the way in Diablo 2 you could just spam potions with no cooldown. It effectively breaks the balance of the entire game, because as long as you can buy potions, you can always survive. And it's also way too easy to run away, and just lots of really basic game design stuff like that was not in Diablo 2, that was coming into like console action games then. And all of that stuff is factored into Diablo 3, but I don't think people have noticed, because we take it for granted in 2012 that games are going to have that kind of sophisticated balancing and those kind of combat mechanics going on.
There is something weird about Diablo in that two separate people said to me, I'm not going to play Diablo 3 because it's too simple, and someone else said I'm not going to play Diablo 3 because it's too complicated. And they're both right in a way, that it is, on one level, it's very simple, you're hitting things, and then by hitting them you get better at hitting them. And the other way is that it is, oh my god, which loadout, which skills, which runes, what's going on, what are all these menus, and stuff like that. I think that it does have this. One thing I really like about the new one is I think it actually has more of an ebb and flow kind of rhythm to it, especially in the first two acts, in that you have those crazy moments. Like some of the later dungeons in Act 2 are just mental. And they're so much fun. It's so like you especially if you're playing with a couple of other people, you're all different classes, and you're all about level 20, 25. I can't believe all of this stuff that is going on. And then you will have your explorative moment where you're kind of just sort of wandering through.
It is a super accessible game though, and I don't have a problem calling it a casual game, because at least to begin with it is. But I think it's absolutely intended to be. This is a game for like a super broad audience.
Look at that level. Look at the level from levels 1 to 7. Each level introduces another mechanic. By level 7, I think, is it 6 or 7 where you get your first rune, and it's that's about an hour. Level 1 to 7 is about an hour of playing, and it has not let go of your hand in a good way all the way through that. And each 15 minutes you're getting something, each 5 minutes, whatever you're getting.
But something. I do like, if you bought it and you're playing on normal and you're disappointed, just hang in there. Honestly, hang in there until you get to Nightmare. It's not a massive step change, but you will definitely notice. You'll go back and you'll re-experience the game kind of as it should be, where the rare monsters can really surprise you, and they've all got like cool extra skills, like they can firebomb you, or they put slows down or whatever, and you have your full loadout, and you're feeling like a bit of a badass by that point, and then you can play the game again, but you can go back to those early levels with the fewer monsters and a slightly spookier, different feel, and get a lot more out of playing them. But really, this is a game built for you to play for a really long time,
right.
and you're gonna either enjoy the challenge at the high levels or enjoy spending money on the auction house to be so overpowered you don't notice the challenge, which some people will enjoy, and the game is built to accommodate that.
Cool. Do you think this is the hardest thing you've ever had to review? Or the hardest task as a reviewer?
Actually, StarCraft 2 was harder, but that was only because like real-time strategy is not really my genre.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the toughest ones. But like I used to review MMOs for a living, and that is like as MMOs go. I mean, I do almost consider this one, but it's mechanically fairly simple. But there's a lot of different aspects to it, and like the always online thing. Sorry to bring it up, but that made it doubly hard because. It's like bugs in Skyrim. It's like it's really difficult. I know people lose patience with reviewers, and I can understand why.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult to know how far you need to let things affect your judgment when you know that they're going to be fixed, or when there are issues that exist outside of the game design itself. So, yeah, it was really tough. But I mean, certainly playing the game was terrific fun, and I really enjoyed taking 2 days of work to simply hammer through it.
Yeah, cool. We should move on, I guess, to the online issues that there have been since the game's launch last week. On last week's podcast, Tom Bramwell promised us that this would die down after a couple of days. But it's ongoing. I was on the forum earlier, and I was looking at some posts, and there was a guy in the Diablo 3 thread called Witch King saying, I'm suffering from stupid amounts of lag, which have meant the game has been unplayable for me since Saturday. I've just sat there looking at the login screen, and when I do get in, running around the world, unable to interact with stuff until I reach a blue screen edge to the game where it hasn't been able to update the world. I've given up on it as it's way too frustrating and annoying. I sat for an hour last night trying to play the game before I gave up and read a book. People are reading books, Ollie. This is a disaster.
What book?
He didn't offer that, unfortunately.
Well, this is like, just carrying on from what I'm saying just now, this is a real problem with factoring stuff like this into reviews, is that I simply did not have that experience.
Yeah.
I was quite lucky, and it took me a couple of days to realise how bad the situation was, to be quite honest. And it was around the time that I published my ill-timed article about the strength of the online game, which I still stand by everything I said in it, but you know, I simply didn't. I saw there was a lot of good stuff they were doing with the online game, and I wanted people to be aware of that in the midst of all this chaos. But I didn't realise how bad it was, because I'd had like a couple of occasions where I hadn't been able to log in for about 40 minutes to an hour, and then once I was in. I hadn't experienced any lag. I mean, I've got a good connection at home because I work at home, so that would have been part of it. But also, I think luck is a part of it.
Sure.
And I didn't have like a serious problem until Sunday, when the servers were down for 4 hours. So I have had a good experience with it. The lag thing in particular, it just hasn't really been an issue for me. But it was when Chris's account got hacked on Sunday, and the servers were down for 4 hours on Sunday afternoon, which is just such a perfect Diablo play time. And John Bedford also was on MSN to me saying that the game was crashing his router, and I was like, okay, this is really going wrong now.
That's the demons coming across the other side.
So yeah, and by the time, I was glad that I took the extra time to write the review, because I came to understand how serious the problems were, how badly handled the launch had been, and also how damaging the always online thing was. Now, I said earlier, I came to this game from World of Warcraft, and I think it may be for that reason that I've never really had any problem thinking of it in my head as an online game.
Yeah.
And also because I played World of Warcraft so long, and let's be honest, in World of Warcraft, often you're playing alone and enjoying playing alone, but I'm used to the idea that playing alone in an online world is valuable and fun. I like that. I like having my friends in a chat channel while I'm soloing, and I've liked that for like 8 years now. So that was the mindset I was in, and I wasn't in the mindset of the Diablo 2 players who maybe never even tried the Battle.net mode and just wanted to like play this new game, and they just couldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also think that, you know, you never expect a smooth online game launch, but this one's been really bad, and Blizzard has done this so many times before, and I don't understand why like they couldn't have done a cut down offline mode, because StarCraft 2 has one. It has it's really limited. You have to sign in a guest profile. You can't own achievements, but it's there. And if you want to play the campaign and you can't go online, or you don't want to go online, you can do it. You can still play your game. And I really think that should have been implemented here. I think I know why it wasn't, and I think it's pride. I think Blizzard had always envisaged this game as an online game. They have their business reasons for it, sure. It's about protecting revenue and about protecting the security of the real money auction house.
Right.
But also, I've been covering Blizzard for a long time now, and I know that they're really only interested in making online games. It's what the whole company is about. And they've designed and conceived this game completely as an online game, and they don't want you to have the experience of Diablo 3 offline. They literally don't want you to have it. But and because they thought they didn't want people to play that game and not have all of those extra features, but they should have done it anyway. They should have climbed down off their high horse and put it in there. And you know, as we've seen, like having a game online only is hardly a guarantee of security anyway.
Is there any chance that the online aspects or the benefits of always online at any point outweighing the negative aspects? The fact that I can't play the game until I have no internet access, which is obviously not their fault, but I don't have any internet access for the next 3 weeks, so I am automatically unable to play this game, which seems like a terrible shame to me. Yeah,
but like you wouldn't say that about World of Warcraft, because you would just assume that you wouldn't be able to play it. It's an online game,
so people need to get their heads around.
And I think the audience for the game will do that, particularly because the people who are most upset now are the people who just want to hammer through it on their own. They probably don't necessarily want to engage with it in that really sort of deep way over months and months, where they get into the community and they get into trading and they get into high level play and mucking around with character builds. They just want to smash through the story and have fun playing Diablo. Those people will probably fade away, and it will become less of an issue, because people will get used to the game as it is. But that doesn't make it right.
Yeah. Chris, you had, as we talked about briefly earlier, an experience on Sunday where your account was hijacked.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that. What happened?
Well, I mean, yeah, this was largely my own fault, I could say. I mean, I was remarkably unbothered about it, and my instinct was, I'm an idiot. I didn't download the authenticator. I also, because I reviewed it on a friend's PC, so I have no idea what his PC security setup was like, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it was he who hijacked it. Maybe he is Anna, the Ukrainian. I was concerned about my credit card details, or whatever, which I gather were nothing. Certainly no one's bought any kind of Ukrainian bunk beds on my account. I just felt like a bit of an idiot. I think I've since sorted out the authenticator, which I should have done before. Blizzard's, I had to phone them because I was on a train. It all happened at the wrong moment, basically. I was on a train going to London. Ollie texted me to tell me that someone had been flirting with him from my account, which I endorse entirely. And I had to phone Blizzard. That is not the easiest process in the world, getting them to sort that out. They can't really sort it out over the phone, so you need to go back into your account. And at that point, I didn't know.
What I was saying earlier about an online focus company, you need to submit a ticket.
And at that point, I was trying to say to her, look, I'm not near my account, and when I get there, I don't even know whether I can get back into it. I don't know what it's going to look like. When I finally got into it, I think I can't work out. I raised a ticket in the end, and they sorted it out, and I don't know whether my stuff was stolen and replaced, and they rolled it back. Whatever happened, all my stuff was there. It was all broken. I was in a different part of the game, for me, as long as they're not actually taking literally my money, I'm not that bothered by this kind of thing. I can imagine it is annoying. I think when the real money auction house goes in, it's going to be a problem. I think it's weird that. I think they've got to prepare for this, because they have, by having a real money auction house, they are incentivizing hacking, and they'd better be prepared for when this happens.
They issued a statement this morning, I think it was, saying...
They've said, despite the claims and theories being made, we've yet to find any situations in which a person's account was not compromised through traditional means of someone else logging into their account through the use of their password, which means Chris Donlan's password is password.
No, it's password 1.
Is that because you have to put a numeral in it?
No,
uppercase P.
No, I mean, I wasn't angry at Blizzard. I was angry at myself. And I wasn't even that angry at myself. It was when Wes phoned up and says, "Can I use your store?" I was like, "Oh, go on then." Then everyone in the world is going to know what an idiot I am. But yeah, I've got the authenticator. We'll see what happens. My credit card is not attached to that account anymore. So
Right.
I hope they don't release anything else I want to buy.
How do you think this is going to play out with the real money auction house?
It's pretty worrying, isn't it? It's.
Yes.
I think the
I'm trying to. I need to think back on how the auction house works and what you will be able to do from within the account.
While you think about that, can I
you
say
may
something?
only be, because you have to cash out through PayPal. You'll probably only be able to cash out through a PayPal account that is linked to your Battle.net account. So they will probably have to get your PayPal as well if they're going to take your money.
Right.
No one's ever hacked PayPal before.
And they also can't take your money because you don't store a balance of cash on your Battle.net account. You store a balance of, because Blizzard doesn't want to be a bank, not just yet anyway. They store it. You can either like have Blizzard points, which you can spend again in the auction house or on other Blizzard stuff, or you can cash out your item sale instantly via PayPal. So that system protects them to a certain degree. But if you're keeping lots of valuable items in your account, someone logs in and they can make the PayPal thing work, perhaps you haven't even attached a PayPal to your account, then you are in trouble. There will be vulnerabilities to cleverer online crooks than I am, for sure.
I'm more concerned about the auction house just in terms of how it works, in that but since loot is so marginalised in this game, and
Yeah.
it really is until the later stages where you like you say, you have to have armor sets and you have to really think about numbers. When I look at the auction house, there's nothing I really want there, and I don't think I'm that alone. And when you browse, so like you type in, but what's great about it is you can search like barbarian. I want the best weapons for one hand.
It's really nicely done.
Brings up all that stuff, and you look at it and you're just like, none of this stuff is actually that exciting. I put some stuff on there myself really early. I put like the first crap I found in the game, I stuck on there just to see what would happen, and it sold for like ludicrous amounts. I got 30,000 gold for something idiotic, and now you sell good stuff on there and you get like 100 or 200 or 300 or the really good stuff's getting like tens of thousands, but most stuff you find is not getting very much. So the market's balanced itself out really quickly.
I think it's very early to say, and people aren't actually turning up the really good items yet, because they'll probably come from late Nightmare and Hell onwards.
But like, I think when they took the runes out of loot, they took a lot of stuff away from the auction house, because the runes are what I would be searching for.
Yeah, 100%.
And no one, they're not part of it. They're just not part of that game.
Okay.
And I think the reason they did that probably was so they didn't completely destroy their economy, because you would have had runes up here, and sorry, this is radio. You would have had runes costing a lot and everything else not costing that much. It's just loot is just not that exciting in this Diablo until you're really a long way into
Yeah,
it.
it's another complaint I noticed on one of the forums. People saying that some of the legendary drops so far have been quite often significantly weaker than some more common equipment. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, I mean it can happen, but it's part of the extreme randomization of Diablo. It's like the stuff that drops will be in a very broad level range, and it will have there's quite big tolerances within each thing. Like if you've been playing WoW, you expect everything blue to be way better than everything green, and everything purple to be way better than everything blue. And in this, there's you might have like a blue item with really good stats versus a yellow item with like kind of middling ones, and you actually have to kind of look at the items, and that's what makes loot in a Diablo game special, is that each one really is not just like this is like a polearm at this level of quality. It's like this is a really good polearm at this level of quality, or a slightly shit one, or a one with really bizarre stats that you might want or that might be no use to you. So yeah, I think like especially with the rarer drops, you're not going to know for a while because they're supposed to be rare.
But I also, even if the rare drops are amazing, I totally believe it. I still think if, like Borderlands, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about Borderlands briefly. if they did an auction house in Borderlands, I'd be all over it, and I would hate it at the same time. It would be game destroying because the guns are so exciting, and because that game, the skills are all right, but it's really about the loot.
Yeah.
And in Diablo 3, you have the opposite situation. The loot is all right, but it's really about the skills.
Yeah.
And so just the excitement level I get thinking of this notional auction house for Borderlands 2, which I really hope they don't do. That's much more than I'm excited about this auction house.
I think it's fine. I mean, one thing is, I always thought the real money auction house was interesting, and then I got in the game and I used the gold one, and I was like, I don't understand why I would ever use the real money auction house. Fair play to you if you do want to, but I don't. But that's a good thing, because it means that Blizzard's business model for this game is not holding players over a barrel at all. It's just saying, if you want to participate in this economy, you can, and we're going to profit. But if you don't, you can still enjoy the game to the full. You really can. So I think they've like, in opposition to the always online thing, in this respect, even though it's not online yet, I think you'll find that they've managed to put this thing in with like really not impacting players in a meaningful way at all, and that's cool. But I do know what you mean. Like I went a foray on the auction house about level 30, and I bought myself a really awesome bow that was on there that was really quite cheap, and it just massively overpowered my character. And for the next like 2 chapters of the game, a few quests, I was just annihilating everything without getting touched for like a really paltry amount of game gold, and that didn't feel right. But I don't think the economy is balanced yet, and I think it will take quite a while to do so. But yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think the thing about the game design in particular is that, like, armor's armor, right? It's going to like have stats on it, and that's cool to nerd out over. But weapons are always something really special, because you're like, I want a bow, or I want an axe, and I want it to look cool and have like a glowing red thing on it, and I want to, really feel the weapon speed and the damage that it does when I'm attacking enemies. But the way skills work in Diablo, you never really actually use your weapon. You need to have one equipped to use certain skills,
right?
But you're not actually using that weapon. You're not using your weapon attack to perform those skills. So the weapon becomes another kind of buffy bit of armor that you're holding, and it makes your character look cool. But yeah, it's less important, and I wonder if the economy is going to take off in the way that they hope.
Even then, it's so interesting. I was talking to, when we went to Blizzard, was it last year we went to Blizzard?
Yeah.
And I got completely lost in this idea that they are creating essentially a virtual diamond mine, in that, just goods come out of this and they plug into the real economy. And I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's going to write papers that are brilliant, and I don't really understand on this, but I quite want to read them. I want to read about what happens when, I mean, games have done this for a long time, but they're legitimizing it, and that is a really big step. What happens when you make a game and you know that it is going to create actual money for people?
But I think that's exactly it. I think that's where they were. They were making the game, and they knew that it was going to create actual money, and they were like, well,
they want a piece of that.
Well, they want a piece of it, but also it is. I do believe the argument that it's kind of facile to think that you can just ignore that and just not kind of start to incorporate in your game. If at least if it kind of suits the game design that you have, which with Diablo they argue that it does. I think it's kind of it would be. Yeah, I think it would be silly to ignore the fact that stuff goes on, and they do say, look, we have a large number of players of our game who really like to do this, and they have a shitty experience. It causes hacking. It might still. It causes stealing and item duping, and we want to make it all okay for everybody. And I know that wasn't number one on their list of priorities when they created it, but I think it is a reasonable argument for it. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens when it comes out, and
it is a reasonable argument, but it doesn't. If you're not that person, if you're not into the auction house, you don't want that. That argument doesn't really cut it for you, because you're like, well, these people have got what they want, but I've got Diablo 3. I can't play on a plane, which is where I played most of Torchlight. I can't play it with mods, which is something which is just really fun, and I don't have that weird philosophical sense of owning it, which you just don't have, and I don't know.
No, you don't. But what I have is I have a greater philosophical sense of owning my characters, because they are persistent and they're online, and I know that I can sell my copy of the game and they will still exist, and I will still be able to access them because they exist. And I know that intimately from World of Warcraft. And if you spend some time with game characters that exist on servers and take on a life of their own, whether they're like EVE Online pilots or WoW characters or whatever, they do become way more important, and they become like I'm sure a WoW character can be way more important than a character in Skyrim, but just through that kind of persistence. Like you sell your Xbox, you know, that character is your Skyrim character is gone forever, but you like a character in Diablo will always exist. So I'm not saying in the Ukraine, I'm not saying it makes up for it, but that is, you know, for me that is actually more meaningful. But then I'm not a hoarder when it comes to games. I don't collect them. I don't have shelves full of them at home. I like to just experience them.
Dreams here. Is this the future then? All games or more games? Always
more
online?
For sure, yeah.
SimCity next year, always online.
People seem quite cool about SimCity being online. Or at least some people seem to be. It seems
it's because it's not out yet.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Like if Blizzard can't get it right the first time, or what, if Blizzard can't get it right with ease, it's going to be interesting to see how other people struggle with it. Blizzard, when you have like near infinite money and resources, it seems sometimes.
And EA have burnt a lot of goodwill recently. So
EA turned servers off. So yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, our game's going to be online only. By the way, we're turning off all these servers from 2 years ago. They need to sort that messaging out a little bit.
Yeah.
Do we know when the Real Money Auction House is due out?
Week?
It's supposed to be today, but I think they've pushed it back, haven't they?
It said the 30th when I logged on today. It said the 30th.
So that's a week tomorrow. There you go, next Wednesday. We've got some listener questions for you on the subject of Diablo. Rich Stanton.
I don't want to answer this one already.
Do you think gold is largely redundant beyond buying extra storage space? Cash feels very unimportant.
Yeah, it's interesting. They are making no attempt to. They're not really limiting gold as much. I mean, like there are these monsters. There are these little characters called gold imps that run around, and if you're not careful, they cover an entire level in gold before you've laid a hand on them. So gold, you won't be going through this game going, oh man, if I had 50 cents more or whatever.
I've spent mine. I spent mine, like all of it, nearly all of it, on crafting. The crafting system is the gold sink, so it's leveling up your blacksmith and your jewel crafter to a lesser extent, but blacksmithing, if you get into it, is a big gold thing. It gets quite expensive, and if you buy like 1 or 2 items from vendors or from the auction house, yeah, you will lose it. But I've played other games where, like, I think Skyrim's a good example of a game where money's virtually meaningless after a while.
Yeah. He also asked, I think we covered this a little bit, the focus on skills has made weapons little more than stat boosts. Sensible trade-off or long-term problem? Could this be a long-term issue for the game?
I think it could be a long-term, as we were just saying, it could be a long-term issue for the auction house. For player trading, it could be an issue. But in terms of the game design, it works fine because the characters are still really fun to play. So, yeah, maybe it's a shame you don't get quite as excited when you pick up a new bow, but you still get excited. So, yeah, it's all about the skills,
Fair enough. Slim Gamer Mike, what's your favourite enemy?
Ooh.
Oh, it's the dervish. It's the dervish in the desert. I can't remember what it's called, but there's like a dervish who has like bladed skirts, and when you kill them, it kind of again, not work on radio. Their skirt kind of spins through the air and embeds itself in the ground, and it looks amazing. It's like knocking out a jet engine. It's fantastic. That's the one.
Any for you, Ollie?
I love those gold imps, actually. I know they were in Diablo 2 already, but the implementation of them is just brilliant. The way you're sort of chasing them around this little trail of gold they leave every time you hit them, and then they just explode in a shower of
I'm
loot.
picturing them as those little guys from Golden Axe that used to hit with, they used to carry the axes, carry the sacks around. And used to hit them.
There's something very Christmassy about them. Very Christmassy imp.
I don't know. I like all the stuff in the cathedral, all the skeletons and stuff. It's all it's hoary old kind of fantasy stuff, but it's so well done, and the sound is just brilliant. Like you can hear their bones and their sort of really dry, raspy, throaty cries. Or there's these weird kind of giant toad things that are pretty cool. It's just loads of mad stuff. Actually, when you get like spoilers. yeah, I can't really say. But like later on in the game, you will see some pretty extraordinary. When it just gets to like full on hordes of demons, you'll see some pretty mad creations.
Is that new enemies entirely, or new sort of skills or attacks from existing enemies?
New enemies entirely.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, like, you go back to those guys on Nightmare, they probably will have new stuff.
Cool. He also asked, and I'm not even sure if this is related to Diablo, but he says card numbers should not be all zeros. Does that ring any bells?
Wow, that's profound.
It is, isn't it?
I'm going to
and not related to Diablo.
You know what's going to happen is like 3 years later, you'll be wandering through the Gare du Nord or something, and you'll suddenly realise what he means.
We'll get back to you. John Mallinson, sorry, and Dash Ginge want to know if the game will work as a console experience.
Ooh. I've heard an amazing conspiracy theory that the reason why the skills are brought to the fore is because Blizzard is only interested in the console version, which is just
PC gamers love this, though, don't they?
So I just don't believe that for even.
No, I certainly don't believe it put that way. I think it's not unreasonable to assume that the skill system has been somewhat influenced by the idea there might be a console version in the future.
But I mean, like Torchlight works on a console, all right. There's no reason why it shouldn't work on a console. It's just whether there is that much. Whether it makes sense at this stage in consoles' lives, and I mean,
well, can you see stuff like would they do the real money auction house and that kind of stuff?
That depends on what they can get past the console manufacturers.
Remember,
and I think that will, whether the console version actually happens will depend on how much Blizzard can do.
I think with the next generation of consoles, you will be doing a lot more stuff online anyway. I think so. It's not the biggest. I can't see it being the biggest hurdle in the world.
As for the game design itself, I think they can make it work. But they will, being Blizzard, they will give it a really, really thorough going over. Like, it won't be like the port of Torchlight, which, as you say, was good, but was essentially recognisable as very much the same game. It will control, I imagine, in particular, really quite differently, and that will have effects on the combat mechanics and the rhythm of combat. It'll probably be a bit slower, maybe a bit slower and a bit more involved, a bit less like furious. But I'd love to see it. I'm really interested to see what they can do. And they've always said, and I agree, that of their games, it's the one that's most suitable to putting on consoles.
Is there a console release for Torchlight 2?
No, not as yet.
Is there a Mac release for Torchlight 2?
I believe so.
Okay.
No, because they were on XBLA before, but this game's too big. It's just simply too big to release as a download game. So they would have to go into distribution, which for Runic would be a pretty big step. But I imagine if the game is a big hit, then they will certainly do that. It's all in the same engine, so it should be easy to port over. But yeah, I think that will come after the PC release, and depending on how that goes. But since I expect it to do really well, I should think there's a good chance of it.
Are they still working on the MMO as well?
I think that's been a bit sidelined.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Fair enough. Alec Meir wants to know, what's your biggest sword?
I don't really, because I haven't played a barbarian. I don't really have any massive two-handed.
Does anyone ever play as barbarians in these games? It always strikes me as the most.
It's the most popular character in Diablo. By some distance. So that or the wizard.
I played it because I played as it because I figured it was the one I was least interested in. So if that was good, then good news.
And it's really good, actually.
It is really good.
I did the same with the beta. It's the first character I rolled on the beta, and it's got so much impact.
You're basically a force of earthquake. You're the most tectonic barbarian ever. Someone that just leap. After a while, you move beyond leap, or beyond the point where leap is a particularly useful skill, but you keep it in there because it's so much fun. Just seeing this guy leap through the air and then to pound the ground.
You see, this is like going back to the start. What we're talking about. This is what I love, is that the skills really are so much fun. It's not about thinking I'm going to use this skill because it is optimized for the kind of combat style that I am doing and is working numerically stat-wise against these enemies. You're using the skills because just every time you click the mouse, you feel happy because it's like the sound, the animation, the effects, the physics as the bodies go flying everywhere. It just all feels so brilliant. And that's why I gave the game a good review. If you want to, like, in one answer, that's it. It's just it's basically fun. And Blizzard do this like no other PC game developer, like very few other developers. They make games that feel like Nintendo games. They've got that level of instant like feedback to them. Actually, that's like as PopCap do it as well. But yeah,
good. Well, that seems like a good place to leave it. Unless we've got anything else we want to cover.
I'm done.
I'm kind of hoping this will be the last time I speak about this game in public or write about it.
You both reviewed it and obviously been playing it pretty much solidly the last week. Are you going to carry on playing it?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Gripes, yes.
Yeah, but I'm going to have a break.
Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you to Ollie Welsh.
Thank you.
Thank you to Chris.
Thank you.
I've been Tom Champion. Thanks very much for listening and for your questions, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.